Good evening, Heaven Bound family, and all that may be watching or listening. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word on this Thursday morning, June the 10th. And we're down to the 37th chapter of the book of Genesis. Actually, 36 covers Esau and his genealogy and how that he became the father of Edom and had his various dukes and princesses of Edom. Beginning in chapter 37, all the way through the rest of the book, 37 through 50, we have the story of Joseph. One chapter exception will be when Judah goes and has an affair with a harlot named Tamar, and will bear him two sons. And that chapter is kind of given over to Judah, but aside from that, the rest of the book is given over to the life of Joseph. And off the top of my head, without trying to cover it all, let me say that Joseph is more a type of Christ than any other character in the Bible. And let me see if I can just kind of share with you how he is the type of Christ. And the wonder of it all is this: Joseph lived even before the law was written. And so Joseph didn't have a Bible, didn't have even the Old Testament law. And yet he is as close to a perfect example of Christ as probably any man who ever lived. How is he a type of Christ? Well, he is a favorite son of his father. He was hated by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused by Potiphar's wife. He was put into prison for 13 years, I believe it is, from the time that he had been sold at 17, and he was in prison until he was 30. Like Christ, he began his ministry in the sense of the word at age 30. In other words, at age 30, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, put Joseph in charge of all of Egypt, second only to himself. And that Joseph is a type. Christ is second only to the Father. Joseph was second only to the king of Egypt. Christ will marry a Gentile bride. Joseph was given Athena, the daughter of the priest of Non, as his wife, and he is faithful to her, and he will bear two children. I guess you could say even that might be a type of Christ, in the sense that Christ will reign over the nation of Israel as well as the church. And Joseph will have two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Maybe stretching a little bit there. But at any rate, he will show perfect wisdom and skill in interpreting Pharaoh's dreams and carrying out the purpose of the dreams, and that was to preserve not only the nation of Israel, but his father, his brothers, and so forth. Those are some of the ways that Joseph is a type of Christ. He was tempted at all points like as we are, and yet we have no record of him ever yielding to the temptation. We're not saying at this point that Joseph never sinned, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. But there's no recorded sin in Joseph's life, though we have his life from birth to death. And these are some of the ways that Joseph was a type of Christ in his character, in his life. Joseph accomplished had some attributes, some characteristics, some traits, if you will. And just for example, to give a summary of his life, he was a youthful dreamer back in Genesis 37. He'll have two dreams. One, he'll see his brothers bow down to him. It will be fulfilled in chapter 41. The second, he will have not only his brothers, but his father and his mother bow down to him. And I believe this is fulfilled in chapter 45. His second dream concerning his father, mother, and his brothers, he has a dream where the sun and the moon, the sun representing Jacob, the moon representing Jacob's wife. Rachel was actually Joseph's mother, and Leah was the mother of most of Jacob's kids. But he will see Jacob bow down. He will see represented by the sun. He will see the moon represented by Jacob's wife. He will see his 11 brothers all bow down to him. What is important about this is that when we get to the 12th chapter of the book of Genesis, John is going to record there was a great wonder in heaven. A woman who had the sun and the moon and 11 stars. And much misinterpretation has been done in the 12th chapter of Genesis, the 12th chapter of Revelations, I'm sorry. But when we read the Genesis account of Joseph's dream, it's easy to see that the woman in the dream, or the woman in Revelations, is indeed Israel. And so we go on down. He is faithful in hard places in chapter 39, 1 through 6, and 20:23, where he is sold to the Ishmaelites. He is cast into a dungeon, left for dead, then taken out, sold to the Ishmaelites, taken to Egypt, sold to Potiphar, and then is falsely accused by Potiphar's wife and is cast into prison. He resists his temptation in Genesis 39, 7 through 13, when it comes to Potiphar's wife, who tries to get him to seduce her. He is unspoiled by sudden prosperity in Genesis 41, when Pharaoh makes him the ruler of all of Egypt, second only to himself. His prosperity doesn't go to his head. He manifests his brotherly love in Genesis 43, all the way down through chapter 50, really. He will show kindness and brotherly love to his brothers. His filial devotion to his wife and his sons, they're in Genesis 45 and 47. He's dependent upon God in Genesis 41 through 16 and 45:8. When Pharaoh says, I heard that you can interpret dreams, Joseph said, it's not within me to do so. Only God can do that. He gives God the credit. His dependency upon God in Genesis 41 through 45, in trusting God for wisdom in dealing both with, first of all, the famine, and then dealing with his brothers who come down and revealing himself to them, and ultimately using them to bring his father Jacob down to Egypt. By the way, another way in which Joseph is a type of Christ. He is the salvation of Jacob and his brothers. They're taking them to Egypt, where they will grow into the nation of Israel. And so, while Christ was the offers spiritual salvation, eternal salvation, Joseph offered a physical salvation to his family. And he returns good for evil in chapter 50, verse 16 through 21. These are some attributes of Joseph during his lifetime. And these are ways in which he was a type of Christ. And again, I think a lesson that we can draw from it, if Joseph could be all of those things without the Holy Spirit living inside him, without a Bible to read, how much more so should each of us set our goal to exemplify Christ? We are saved for the very purpose of becoming like Christ, being conformed to the image of God's Son, according to Romans chapter 8. And so I encourage you, read Genesis chapter 37 through 50, and we can finish up the book of Genesis with this. Joseph will live to be 110 years old. Before he dies, he will ask that his brothers take him back to Israel, back to the land of Canaan, and bury him there in his father's house. He will stay entombed in Egypt for the next 432 years. But when the children of Israel is taken out of Egypt by Moses, then the body of Joseph will be taken out with them. He will go with them through the 40 years in the wilderness wandering. And ultimately, under Joshua's leadership, he will be brought into the land of Israel. And once the land is divided and Ephraim is given his portion of land, Joseph will be buried in the land of his son Ephraim, there in that portion of the land of Canaan. By the way, Joshua is a Ephraimite, meaning that he is a far distant relative to Joseph, two great men of God, who both in some ways are examples of Christ and his wonderful grace. This is Pastor Larry with a moment in the Word. Perhaps a different devotion tonight, but I encourage you, read those 11 chapters. Tomorrow we'll pray about another direction to go in. I had no intentions of covering every chapter in Genesis when I started. I was just going to hit some highlights, and somehow we got involved in the whole book there. But at any rate, we may move to a New Testament book after Genesis. We'll pray about it, and we'll let you know tomorrow just what it is, where it is that God would lead us for Friday. You have a blessed and wonderful day. Go forth, enjoy this Thursday. It's the day the Lord's made. Rejoice, be glad in it. Hey, go forth and bless someone today. It'll bless them, it'll bless you, it'll bless God. And God, in turn, will give you an extra blessing. Have a wonderful and blessed evening or morning, day, and be blessed.